What would you do with an extra £10,000 per month? £120,000 a year. Would you go on a nice holiday? Would you buy a nicer car? Or would you buy a house? Well, whatever you do, there's one main problem, and that is you don't have £10,000 per month. And if you do, I don't really know why you've clicked on this video. But in this video, I'm going to explain a few different ways that you can make £10,000 per month in property. Now, as I say, there's a few different ways that you can break this down and a few different ways that you can make 10 grand a month in property. I'm going to break a few of those ways down. I have a personal preference because I just think there's ways of doing it, especially if you're just getting started, ways of doing it a lot easier than other ways. But I'm going to break down a few different ways so that you can pick and choose, look at the different pros and cons of each one and make a decision about which one you want to go for. The first one I'm going to say is probably the most difficult way to make 10 grand a month. However, it's probably the most reliable once you've got it. And that is to just build up a simple buy-to-let, single-let portfolio. So you have the property, you rent it out on an AST contract to an individual or a family or whoever it might be, but you've got one person or a couple of people on that AST contract. They pay you every month, you pay off your mortgage and like insurance and whatever else, and you keep the profit. Now, on average, you make, but the average, okay, is about £250 to £300 per month profit, net profit, on your single let properties. So if we're taking that into consideration, we're saying £300 per month. It's going to take you about 35 houses, 30 to 35 houses before you're making a solid 10 grand a month income. That's the con. The con is that it's going to take a long time. 35 houses is not easy to get. It's a lot of houses to buy, and so to be able to get that many is difficult. It's long-winded, but here's the benefit. Once you've got it, it's going to cash flow really well. It's going to give you a guaranteed and probably about as passive as it gets in terms of generating that 10 grand a month. It's about as passive as it gets. Once you've got those houses, it's passive income. And in terms of residential property, it's as passive as it gets. The next way that you can make 10 grand a month is through property deal sourcing or deal packaging or being a property trader, broker. There's a few different terms people use for it, but essentially it's when you find a deal, you find a buyer, you partner them together and you take a fee, usually from the buyer. Now, I personally think that this is the best way to generate 10 grand a month, only because it's the fastest way to do it. If you're getting started, you don't need your own properties. You can use other people's properties, you find them, secure the deal, sell it onto a buyer, and you get a fee, and you can get like £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 per deal very comfortably. So you get 2 or 3 of them a month, and straight away you're hitting your 10 grand a month goal. You could do that, and here's one of the pros, is that realistically, in terms of making 10 grand a month, it's realistic to think that you could do that within 6 months. If you really put the graft in, you really put the time and work into getting that going, getting that off the ground, getting the right buyers in place, it's realistic to get that in about 6 months. The difficulty is, and this is always the case, finding buyers. Okay, so one of the hardest things about deal packaging is getting a list of serious buyers. You can get a whole bunch of people to put their hand up and say, yeah, put me on your mailing list, but how many of them will actually buy a deal off of you? Actually, there's very few. And so what you need to do is build up the biggest list you possibly can, or just isolate those people and kind of qualify your buyers in a way that filters out all the time wasters, and you have only serious buyers on your list. The other downside to deal packaging is that it is hard to systemize and make passive. So it's very much active income. It's not like buying a house, renting it out, and then getting paid every month without really doing a whole lot of work. You have to be actively going out and finding those deals. Until you hire a bunch of staff, you really can't systemize a business like that. So that systemizing it and creating a passive income is probably the hardest part of the business. Now, if you're the kind of person who's interested in getting involved in deal packaging, deal sourcing, but you don't really have the buyers, make sure you reach out to me. I am working with a few different co-sources at the minute. The co-source is just a phrase for people who find deals, pass them on to another sourcer who has a big number of clients. That's me. I have a huge number of buyers that are ready to buy, very serious, very qualified. We've got all the systems in place, we've got staff in place. We just want as many deals as possible. So if you can bring us the deal, we'll sell it on and we can split the fee. And that probably, as co-sourcing, comes under like a subcategory of deal sourcing in terms of making 10 grand a month. If you were getting half the fee and you're charging £4,000 and you can therefore get 2 grand a month, 2 grand a deal, every time that you source a deal on, you don't have to worry about finding a buyer, qualifying them, sales progression. Actually, all you just need to do is keep on going after every single deal, and then once you found the deal, pass it on to us, then on to another deal. Like, it just makes it so much easier. So if you're making 2 grand, if you get 5 of those a month, you're on your £10,000 per month.
If you're a serious property investor and you're wanting to get some deals sent directly to you, why don't you take 20 seconds out of your day to click on the link in the description, fill in your details, and any quality property deals that we have will send directly to you.
Now, if you're enjoying this type of content, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be releasing videos every single week, and I would just love to have you part of the family. Like, the YouTube community that we're building means a lot to me, and I'm trying to put a lot more effort into making these videos and making them more consistent and uploading pure value and good content for you guys. So hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss an upload, and any questions that you have, drop them in the comments below. Now, the next way that you can make 10 grand a month through property is building a HMO portfolio. Now, one of the pros to this is that it takes way less number of houses than on a buy-to-let portfolio. Assuming that you make about £800 to £1,000 per month profit on a HMO, you're looking at about 10 to 12 houses to make your 10 grand a month, which I'm sure you can agree, 10 houses sounds a lot more achievable in a short space of time than 35. They will be more expensive, your renovations will be more expensive, but as I say, you can make a lot more money per property on a HMO basis. The other pros that you've got the consistent income. Unlike your deal packaging or deal sourcing, if you are the person being active out there finding the deals, if you struggle to find a deal, then you don't get paid. If you can't sell a deal, you don't get paid. Whereas if you've got HMO, similar to your buy-to-lets, you've got the constant rental income. Yes, you might have a few more voids and higher maintenance bills than your normal buy-to-let, but you still get that regular income coming in, especially if you use the best possible lettings agents to manage the whole thing for you, to keep those void windows as small as possible and maximize the rent so that they're as high as possible. Now, the cons, I've kind of touched on these a little bit with HMOs, but you've got a higher turnover of tenants, you get a lot less. You know, in a buy-to-let, you might have someone in there for like 10 years. They might just be in there for a year, 2, 3 years, whatever it might be, but sometimes they're in way longer. HMOs, depending on the type of HMO that you have, they're usually a lot shorter term, maybe 9 months to a year, and then you'll have about a month's window where you need to turn the room around and get somebody else in. Another downside to HMOs is that the refurb costs are a little bit more, the conversion costs are significantly higher than your normal refurb cost if you were to buy and renovate a normal single let, because you have to have all different HMO regulations. You also will need to pay a little bit more just on maintenance because there's more people, more adults in the house, and therefore more wear and tear. And the last con about HMOs I'm going to talk about is that they are very difficult to manage. If you are managing them yourself, it's very difficult to manage them. I know people that had dreams and aspirations of building a 50 property HMO portfolio, and they got 2 in, they managed them themselves, and they just couldn't deal with it from there. It was just too crazy. They had too many bad tenants, and it just went all wrong for them, and they just got completely stuck. So in terms of managing them, you know, it's not always like that. You might find it's a lot easier. It depends how your systems are, your processes, and your experience. But I would recommend getting a lettings agent in place. There are some fantastic HMO lettings agents out there. If anyone's interested, drop me a message on Instagram and I'll happily introduce you to a HMO lettings agent that I recommend to people that I know are just absolutely incredible. So drop me a DM if you're interested in that. Now, another one is serviced accommodation. A lot of people talk about serviced accommodation, okay? And if you get serviced accommodation right, it is phenomenal. You can make $1,000 to $2,000 a month profit per property. So you're talking like 5 to 10 houses to make you 10 grand a month. This is like, if you are really good at what you do and you know exactly what you're doing, it's huge potential, and once systemized properly can be fairly passive, not as passive as a HMO, but also definitely not as passive as a normal single let buy-to-let property. You have to run it like a business, and like any other business, it needs its systems in place to make it as passive as possible. The other downside is that it is a bit volatile. So one month you might have a feast of guests and then it might be a complete famine the next month. I know people that have started serviced accommodations and they've blown up in the first month and then they've just dipped off and hardly had any guests at all, and it makes it very difficult. The other thing on serviced accommodation, and also HMOs really, currently from when I'm filming, there's a huge hike in energy prices, and I'm sure everyone's being affected by it right now, and the costs are huge. And often in a HMO and in serviced accommodation, you as the owner are expected to pay those bills. So you've really got to make sure that with those increased energy prices and actually those increased mortgage rates, all of those things, we're constantly seeing prices go up and costs of living go up. So you've just got to make sure that if the costs sit with you, make sure that it definitely is a profitable purchase, because if you are paying for people's heating, gas and electricity, and they've just got the heating on all day, every day, that's going to cause you problems because it's going to cost you an absolute bomb. Now, there's a few other ways that you can make 10 grand a month through property, and that might be land sourcing, planning gain, it might be through developments, it might be through house flipping, whatever it might be. I thought I'd just touch on a few on this video. If you want me to do more like this, make sure that you drop a comment in the comment section, and I'd love to jump on another video and go into detail about what I've spoken about, or go into detail about any other ways that you can make this kind of money through property. But I would recommend, if you were getting started in property and you're starting from scratch, I'd go co-sourcing 100%, because it teaches you how to find good quality deals. But I would be saying, if you've got capital and you've got some experience, start buying some properties, start buying some buy-to-lets, siphoning them off, just putting them away, like generating the cash from it and enjoying the capital growth, and slowly build it up from there. In the meantime, be focusing on some kind of capital growing business, whether it's a business that you run already, a deal sourcing business, it could even be your job, just some form of building up your cash pot, and then putting that away to buy your HMOs, your serviced accommodations and your buy-to-lets. That's how I would structure it personally. You can do whatever you want. If you have other ways that you make money in property, I'd love to hear about it. Again, drop it in the comments, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And I know this one has been brief, but I hope it's been helpful. I'll see you in the next video.
Ooh.